At 9:14, two torpedoes are already in the water, not fired from the horizon, not painted by radar, not tracked across 300 kilometers of open ocean. Launched from 800 meters directly beneath the keel of the USS Abraham Lincoln by a submarine that had been sitting completely motionless in the darkness under the most powerful carrier in the world for 6 hours straight. And nobody on that ship knew it was there. The launch transient, the pressure signature from two torpedo tube doors opening at the same moment, hits the Abraham Lincoln's hull-mounted sonar array at 09:14. Petty Officer First Class Antonio Rivera has been a sonar operator for 8 years. He classifies the sound in 4 seconds. Two torpedo launch transients, bearing 247, range 800 meters, running hot. He hits the torpedo warning alarm before he has finished processing what his ears are telling him. 800 meters. At 45 knots, those torpedoes will reach the Abraham Lincoln's hull in 63 seconds. To understand how an Iranian submarine arrived within 800 meters of the most heavily defended carrier strike group on Earth without being detected by anything, you have to go back 11 days. Because what happened at 09:14 did not begin at 09:14. It began in the port of Bandar Abbas when a Kilo-class submarine slipped beneath the surface of the Persian Gulf at 2 in the morning and switched off everything aboard that was capable of making noise. The Kilo-class is what NATO calls the black hole, a diesel-electric submarine so acoustically quiet on battery power at slow speed that it produces less noise than the natural ambient sound of the ocean surrounding it. At 3 knots on batteries, it is effectively transparent to passive sonar. No radar cross-section, no radio emissions, no active sonar pings. It moves through the water column like a shadow, lethal and completely undetectable to anything listening from above. For the first 4 days, the Kilo ran at 3 knots on a heading that carried it east through the Gulf of Oman and into the northern Arabian Sea. Battery power only, complete silence. On day 4, its commanding officer found what he had been looking for, a 280,000-ton supertanker called the Marjan Star, fully loaded, transiting westward through the Arabian Sea on a course that would bring it within 2 miles of the Abraham Lincoln's operating area. A fully loaded supertanker produces an enormous acoustic footprint. Propeller cavitation, engine vibration, ballast water movement. That noise propagates downward through the water column and generates a zone of acoustic confusion directly beneath the hull, a shadow that passive sonar systems struggle to penetrate. The Kilo positioned itself directly underneath the Marjan Star, matched its speed exactly, and rode in its acoustic shadow for 4 days, invisible to everything above it, hidden inside the noise of a civilian vessel that nobody was going to put a weapon into. On day 8, when the Marjan Star's course brought it within 2 miles of the Abraham Lincoln's operating area, the Kilo detached. It covered the remaining distance over 19 hours at 2 knots, batteries only, generating less acoustic energy than the biological sounds of the surrounding ocean. At 3 in the morning on the day of the attack, the Kilo reached a position 800 meters directly beneath the Abraham Lincoln's keel and stopped. It sat there for 6 hours, not moving, not transmitting, not doing anything that any sensor in the strike group formation could register. It had positioned itself on the thermocline, a boundary layer of cold water beneath warmer surface water that functions as an acoustic mirror, bending sonar energy away from anything resting below it. The Abraham Lincoln's hull-mounted sonar was searching. The towed array sonars on the escorts were listening. MH-60R helicopters had been dropping sonobuoys throughout the formation's operating area for days. None of them could see through the thermocline. None of them knew a Kilo-class submarine had been lying 800 meters beneath the carrier's keel since 0300. At 9:14, the Kilo fired. In the Combat Information Center, Tactical Action Officer Lieutenant Commander Hassan Oe receives Rivera's torpedo warning report at 09:14. The information it contains gives him exactly one viable course of action and not enough time to execute it cleanly. The Abraham Lincoln begins an emergency turn to starboard immediately. 100,000 tons of nuclear-powered carrier pushing every shaft horsepower available into changing direction fast enough to move the hull off the torpedo's projected intercept coordinates. The turn begins at 0914. At 28 knots, the carrier can displace its hull a meaningful distance in 63 seconds. But meaningful is not the same as enough. At the same moment, the countermeasure system deploys torpedo decoys from the stern launchers, devices that replicate the Abraham Lincoln's acoustic signature, designed to seduce an acoustically guided torpedo away from the real target and toward a false one. The first torpedo follows a decoy. Its acoustic seeker locks onto the false signature at 400 meters and pursues it away from the carrier, detonating harmlessly 280 meters off the port quarter. The explosion sends a shockwave through the water that the crew feels as a deep, resonant shudder transmitted through the entire hull. The second torpedo does not follow the decoy. Its guidance system correctly classifies the decoy in 1.8 seconds. The acoustic signature is too consistent, too clean. It lacks the irregular noise variations that a real ship produces. The torpedo reacquires the Abraham Lincoln's hull signature, corrects its course, continues inbound, 40 seconds to impact. The carrier's emergency turn has displaced the hull 190 meters from its original position. The torpedo has already corrected for that. It is running straight and fast through dark water directly toward the Abraham Lincoln's keel, and there is nothing between it and the hull, nothing on the surface. Lieutenant Commander James Porter has been airborne since 0845. His MH-60R helicopter has been conducting routine anti-submarine patrol south of the formation for 29 minutes. A standard precaution, a procedure the strike group runs every single day. A mission that had found nothing across weeks of continuous searching. The moment Rivera's torpedo warning transmits formation-wide at 0914, Porter already has the bearing. 247, the same bearing Rivera classified, 800 meters. He had been monitoring the formation's passive sonar picture throughout the entire patrol, and the launch transient that Rivera caught on the hull-mounted sonar had also propagated upward through the water column and registered on a sonobuoy Porter had dropped at 0852, 400 meters south of the Abraham Lincoln's current position. He does not wait for orders. There is no time to wait for orders. At 9:15, 60 seconds after the Kilo fired, 28 seconds before the second torpedo reaches the Abraham Lincoln's hull, Porter releases a Mark 54 lightweight torpedo from 40 feet above the water on bearing 247, directly over the Kilo's last known position. The Mark 54 enters the water and its acoustic seeker activates immediately. It searches for 2.1 seconds. The Kilo has gone to emergency full power the instant it fired. Iranian doctrine: fire and run. Create distance before the enemy can respond. But a diesel-electric submarine that has been running on battery power for 11 days at speeds between 2 and 3 knots has depleted cells. Emergency full power on depleted batteries produces a fraction of the speed a fully charged submarine can generate. And at emergency full power, the Kilo is no longer quiet. It is loud, slow, and desperate, making as much noise as its exhausted machinery can produce, trying to cover 800 meters of water before something in that water finds it. The Mark 54 finds it in 9 seconds. The torpedo detonates against the Kilo's pressure hull at the forward engineering compartment at 0915. The explosion ruptures the hull. Flooding begins immediately and is catastrophic. The Kilo's commanding officer activates the emergency blow system, compressed air forcing water from the ballast tanks, but the flooding rate in the forward compartments exceeds what the system can compensate for. The submarine begins rising toward the surface, not because its commanding officer chose to surface, because the flooding has made maintaining depth physically impossible. The second Iranian torpedo is still running, 18 seconds to impact. Porter has one Mark 54 remaining. He cannot target the torpedo directly. A torpedo running at 45 knots through open water is not a viable target for another torpedo. But he has been thinking about this since the moment he released the first Mark 54. And he has one option that has never been attempted in actual combat operations in the entire history of naval warfare. He releases the second Mark 54 not at the torpedo, not at the submarine, but at a specific coordinate in the water column directly in the second torpedo's path, 200 meters ahead of it, calculated from its bearing and speed. The Mark 54 detonates on a timer at 0915. generating an underwater explosion that sends a shockwave expanding outward through the water column in every direction. A torpedo homing on acoustic signature depends on its seeker being able to distinguish the target sound from background noise. An underwater explosion 200 meters ahead of it does not destroy the torpedo. It does something more precise. It creates 2.3 seconds of complete acoustic chaos in the water column directly in the torpedo's path. 2.3 seconds during which the seeker cannot separate the Abraham Lincoln's hull signature from the noise of the detonation. 2.3 seconds is enough. The torpedo loses the Abraham Lincoln signature. At 9:15, it searches for a replacement target inside the acoustic chaos surrounding it and finds the decoy that the first torpedo ignored, still running, still broadcasting its false signature, 340 meters off the carrier's port bow. The torpedo reacquires the decoy and follows it to detonation at 09:16. The explosion is close enough that the pressure wave rocks the Abraham Lincoln hard enough to throw crew members off their feet in compartments 2 decks below the waterline. The flight deck shudders. Every unsecured object on the ship moves. The carrier lists 1.1 degrees to port for approximately 4 seconds before the hull rights itself. Nothing touches the hull. At 9:17, the Kilo's conning tower broke the surface of the Arabian Sea in a surge of white water. Riding low and listing heavily to port, hydraulic fluid and fuel spreading across the water around it. 8 crew members appeared on the bridge and outer hull within seconds. Their commanding officer was among them. He looked north and saw the Abraham Lincoln already steadying back onto its original heading. Flight operations resuming. Aircraft on approach for recovery. His submarine had spent 11 days being completely invisible. It had closed to within 800 meters of an American carrier, closer than any hostile submarine had come since the Second World War. It had fired 2 torpedoes from 800 meters with 63 seconds between launch and impact. Both of them had failed to find the hull. At 9:31, the Abraham Lincoln's flight deck resumed full flight operations. The first FA-18F launched 4 minutes and 22 seconds after 2 torpedoes had been running toward the carrier's keel. In the Combat Information Center, OA transmitted his engagement report to 5th Fleet at 09:33. 2 torpedo attack from Kilo-class submarine at 800 meters. Both torpedoes defeated, enemy submarine surfaced, crew in the water. No damage to this vessel, no casualties. Then he added one line that his commanding officer kept in the final report without changing a single word. The attack was defeated by a helicopter pilot already airborne who acted before anyone told him to. Iran sent a submarine that spent 11 days being completely invisible. It rode tanker noise for 4 days. It sat motionless beneath the thermocline for 6 hours. It closed to within 800 meters of the Abraham Lincoln, nearer than any hostile submarine in the history of the United States Navy. It fired 2 torpedoes from 800 meters with 63 seconds between launch and impact. It got 63 seconds of relevance, only 63 seconds, because a helicopter pilot had been airborne for 29 minutes, doing a job that had found nothing in weeks of searching and understood what a bearing meant before anyone on the surface had finished reading the alarm. And then the Arabian Sea closed over the Kilo's wreckage in silence while the Abraham Lincoln kept flying.